In the letting go actually opens up the possibility for healing and change and improvement. Well, we were talking about this situation with letting go of kids and my big experience with grown kids, especially. And we don't have a lot of framework around that. It really feels like if you can even sleep at night. I remember going through this experience where I won't reveal who, just to maintain privacy, but I had a child and they were still really young and they had left home. And they were 1,000 kilometers away in another town. And there was a time when I wasn't hearing from them for a week at a time, 10 days at a time. I'd come back to doing this releasing work. I had gone through a big breakdown less than a year before. I couldn't afford emotionally to go back into that space. And I knew I wouldn't be any good for anybody if I went there. So in this situation, I had to just bring them up in my awareness and be aware of my own inner state. And when I was in that fight or flight, kind of that instinctual protection state, I had all the negative emotions going and I'd be really stressed and I couldn't think right. And I knew that if they called home and I was in that state, I would push them farther away because it had left on pretty rough terms. And the only thing I knew was to release and come back to that open state. And in that place, I could have that energy with that interaction where I wasn't asking anything back from them for me to be okay. And I know, looking back, it's been quite a few years now, looking back and talking about it, that made a humongous difference. So digging into that a little bit further, we discovered that the energy underneath it and that kind of clinging feeling, or that our desire to help someone feel better, like kind of soothe everything from the other side as well, it would often cause an inauthentic response from the other person as well. I didn't want them to tell me what they thought I wanted to hear, but also I knew that is what would happen when I would kind of elicit that response and just phone me this often so I could be okay, and just tell me this, that you're doing okay, even if it's not true, so I can be okay. That ended up that would destroy the relationship further. So really the releasing was kind of my last ditch effort to reclaim that relationship. And it just proved to me over time that not only was I able to be okay in that really difficult situation, but from that place, we were able to start taking steps to repair what was already so damaged. So not only did it create that relief for me in the moment, and that got some criticism. My mom was like, if you can sleep at night when your kid is out there, there's something wrong with you. And I when I would release that, I knew the truth of it, but it was hard. It was a hard thing to kind of go against the societal norm of, you have to be, there's a saying, you can only be as happy as your least happy child, something like that. You can only be as happy as your least happy child. And from that place, with that concept, how do you then bring them up to a new level, a better level of happiness if you are sinking down to their lowest level? So for me, when I would be in that panic, usually middle of the night, what's going on? Where are they? What's happening? Are they eating? Are they safe? Just knowing that, I already knew I was in this stress response, and I knew that I had to drop that. So initially it would be just observing what was there. So instead of being wrapped up in it, I'd have to stop and then take a step back and then look at what was happening and the emotions that were really there. And knowing what was there was coming from that really dysregulated, misaligned state, I would have to just drop that, choose with intention to release the emotion. And we've refined things in our process now, but at that point, that's what I was doing. And then after doing that, then my thinking would clear and I would have some bigger insight and I'd have more clarity around the situation, and especially when there'd be an interaction, even in the moment of the interaction, if I'd see the phone number come up, I could just do a quick, okay, I gotta settle. And then from that place, I could carry on and then see what was coming next in the interaction. So it was recognize what was happening, stop, observe, really fully see the emotion and that activation that was there. With intention, choose to drop that, kind of just breathe and relax out of that fight or flight response. And then in that more open state, receive clarity as to next steps. And next steps would be easier to follow. So this was about 10 years ago. So we've refined these steps a bit. So with the presence protocol, the initial steps are the same, very similar. You recognize that you need to come into the present moment, and at that point, see what's there and allow yourself to just see all the emotions that are there, the reactions, and even some of the self-talk that's happening in the moment. We have found some really amazing tools to help drop the stress response in the body, which can really keep the reaction going. So dropping that more quickly can be really helpful so that you can kind of feel settled and regulated and you don't have all those stress hormones going. So stopping, seeing what's there, allowing that to come up, which is guided in the process, in the protocol, and then following the physical breath and eye movements with the intention of dropping the activation in the body. It settles the nervous system, and then we naturally come back into our open state. And in that state, we can receive intuitive knowing, greater perspective, and even the energy really that we need to move forward through a process like that. When you do this process and you're really honest with yourself, you recognize that what you need from the other person is filling a space inside. So we've been conditioned to look for that in other people. And in truth, and this is a big one, and it's not easily accepted sometimes. We have a hard time with this. Sometimes, actually all the time, if we're able to let that go with the view that the other person is a sovereign being, has chosen to come and have this experience, this human experience, has the right to make choices for themselves, and has, in all honesty, no obligation to another person to help them feel better. When we can release, so we don't have to think our way through it, which is what we often tend to do. I have to see this differently. I have to understand it differently. So we try to take these pieces and implement them in our mind without actually releasing the activation in our body that really comes from that instinctual response to keep our kids alive as well, if we're dealing with kids. And recognize that actually ends up limiting our ability to do anything in the situation. So by doing that work first, by releasing that response that is not necessarily helpful, then we can enter a space where not only do we feel more settled and complete without that being resolved, even in the moment, you can come to a place of peace without having the circumstance, the situation change. Then from that place, we can release and see what can come next. So it's a difficult thing to do. It's our most core response. It's one of our strongest instinctual responses, is to keep our kids alive. So we've come to believe that staying in a state of worry and stress and fussing and anxiety when they're not in a good place will somehow keep them safer. But really, that's an obvious lie. It's an obvious false belief. But without dropping the response, which is so natural to our contracted state, then we can't open up into a bigger perspective. We can't receive new creative solutions to the problem, whatever the problem is. So it's kind of counterintuitive. It feels like, no, I have to stay in this stressed state because the situation is bad. But we find, especially as we talk to our clients who've done this, we find that from that state, very little was able to change. But when they learn to release and then receive some guidance and possible more creative solutions because they're in that open receiving state, then things actually could start to heal and mend and possibly change, even on behalf of the other person that they were so that they were hanging on to so tightly. That in the letting go actually opens up the possibility for healing and change and improvement.